Well, hello there. We're back. This is The Rest of Us, a weekly podcast. Yes, it is a podcast talking about The Last of Us Season 2. And we have arrived to the pivotal moment of Seattle Day 1, finally. And we're going to talk about that. First, without spoilers. But before we do that, because, my brain doesn't function anymore, let me introduce the people who are going to talk about this wonderful show. So we have the awesome, the fantastic Owen.
Hello. That was
Woohoo!
so high pitched.
That was so good. I like that. I like that. Then we also have the wonderful, the best Nick. Is he frozen?
Hi guys.
He's frozen. We're like, wow, he's not
It's
Oopsie.
reacting.
no reaction.
Oh, there it is. Hello, everyone.
That was hilarious. I'm gonna keep that in.
Good.
Well done. This is a good start. This is a good start. All right. So we're gonna talk about The Last of Us first, without spoilers. Just a quick, what did we think? So if you haven't seen the episode, you're still good. You're still good. We're gonna start with Owen. What did you think? No spoilers, please.
Well, considering last week's non-spoiler where I just was like, it was great acting, great looks. This episode actually exceeded my expectations. I don't know how to give like non-spoilers without like spoiling, so I'm gonna leave it there that my expectations were exceeded and I was very, very happy with this episode.
Yeah, I'd say that it kind of, I was happy that the episode was a little bit more action-packed. There was a little more action to it and a little bit more context or like we're diving into the backstories of things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some really good plot progressions. A lot of cool little moments to further the plot in this episode. So I was happy with it. I have my misgivings about it, but I think it was a good episode all round.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Well, I wrote one thing in our little Discord group, and I will say it as well. I think I have to admit that it's time for me to apologize to Craig Mason and everyone for all my saltiness in season 1. But I never felt more vindicated by the fact that me and many others, so it wasn't just me, but me. I complained so much about so many things with season 1, and they are just rewriting the entire thing in a way where I'm like, where was this in season 1? Where? It's still a great season, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, this is what I was talking about. And I'm so happy. I'm like, this is literally what happened with Sonic. That is the kind of feeling that I get.
Yeah.
Like, they really listened of what people have been saying after season 1, and I like that. I very much appreciate that. I really enjoyed this episode. I think this might be my second favorite episode altogether. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. So, this is your warning, dear listener or watcher or whatever you do. Um, Spoilers are coming up. We're gonna talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, this is your warning to skip now and come back later after you watch the episode, obviously. So let's get into it. We're going to do the same format as last time. We're going to talk about the episode by characters. And then we're going to have Owen tell us the few Easter eggs that were spotted at the end before we rank the episode itself. So let's talk about the episode by characters. And I'm going to break the circle of last times. And we're not going to start with Ellie because
Okay, good.
there is a new introduction who we all know,
Bye.
and thankfully the amazing, the wonderful, the best person, the only person who could play this role is back in the role because he played it in the game as well. Jeffrey Wright just arrived to play Isaac, who deserves so much more time in the game. I always say this, I think he's a brilliant character, and now he has the time to shine. And oh, he does. So let's talk about Isaac first. And we're going to start with Nick. Like, what did you think
Okay.
about Isaac?
So it's interesting you say that you wish he had more time in the game.
100%.
Because personally, for me, I don't think he needed more time in the game. He felt like very much a supporting character that we didn't need to know about his character because he wasn't part of like the central plot of it. So I didn't feel like I needed anything more with him. But in the TV show format, it's nice to flesh out these supporting characters because obviously the TV show you're able to do a lot more with characters and things like that because at the medium you get a lot more time to tell a story like this. So it makes sense to give that character a little bit more time. I don't feel like I needed it in the game, but I feel like I do kind of need it because I do feel like he's going to be a lot more of an important character in the TV show. I don't think he had as much impact in the game, but it feels like they're definitely going to have him be more involved in the show. And I think that's why they're kind of stretching it out to a season three because they're going to show a lot more of his impact, which would be really cool. It'd be really cool to dive into who he is and what he does. You know, it's not as important to sort of Abby and Ellie's story, but it is cool to learn about kind of what he does and to see how like he's freaking violent and badass in this episode. Like when he just lobs the grenade in and kills all those
Oh,
Fedra guys, I was like, holy shit, what is this?
without a like without a beat, just boom.
That's it.
Oh.
And then his I mean Jeffrey Wright's an incredible actor, but his monologue or whatever his scene where he's talking about the pans
Hmm.
and he's just like, oh, I always wanted these pans, they're so great. And he's like, you put copper on a flame and it just heats up really quickly, but the steel you can hold it because it doesn't. And then he's like, stick out your hand. I was like, oh God, oh. It was just gnarly. And that whole scene, I think that's my favorite scene in this whole episode
Mm.
because I love a good interrogation scene.
Hmm.
Like the scene in the first game of the first season with the whole stabbing the one guy, making the other guy watch it, and then saying
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
pick a spot on the map. I love a good interrogation scene, and this one was brilliant because the actor who plays the Seraphi did a phenomenal job as well, and I absolutely loved it when
His name is
Isaac
Ryan.
heated up the pan. What was that?
His name is Ryan.
All right.
I don't remember his
So
last name.
Ryan, um, when Isaac goes back to heat up the pan again to burn him again, he kind of turns around and Ryan has already got his hand out, basically signaling like, "I'm not afraid of you. I'm not going to give up my people." And that gave me goosebumps. It was just so cool. I love a good interrogation scene like this, and it's probably my favorite scene of the whole episode. And I'm really excited to see more of Isaac because he's a really interesting character. In the game, didn't really care about him much because I was so focused on Ellie and Abby's story. But now that we have a TV show where they can dive into more characters, I'm
Mhm.
excited to learn more about him and very excited to see what they do with it.
But what was even cooler in that interrogation scene, other than the certified like holding out his hand, was Isaac just realized that yeah, there's no point in this, so I'm just gonna kill this fucker and move on to the next one. And I was like, yeah, yeah, because I was sure I was a bit hesitant if they're gonna roll with the okay, I'm gonna do more and be even more brutal, or is it gonna be like a smart move on his end and be like, yeah, okay, dude, so you're not gonna break, that's obvious, so might as well just go to the next one. And when that happened, it's brutal, but I was like, this is how you do a very good character, and
Yeah.
it's perfect. I don't agree though about the whole game aspect because I think for me personally, while I was playing the game, Isaac was mentioned so many times, and we only see him twice. So one is an interaction with Abby at like midway through, and it's very brief, and you don't really get to know him or what are his motivations or anything like that. But he is mentioned constantly, like Isaac has a plan, Isaac this, Isaac that, blah 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 blah. And then at the end, he shows up, he kills. What was her name? God damn
All
it.
right.
The
Um. Oh
Is it
God,
Yara? Is that Yara?
Yara. Yeah, Yara. Yeah,
yeah, oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Kills Yara, and that's it. And then he dies. And I was like, but was Isaac important? But why are we including him at all if this is
See,
all we're gonna do with him? Like, it's.
see,
I
that's
feel like
that's
he was kind of unnecessary in a way. to even exist in the game if they're not gonna do more with him. So that's why I like here that we already getting a whole new side that we didn't get to see in the game. And I don't know if it was ever intended in the game to maybe have a bigger role for Isaac. I think they wasted a very good Jeffrey Wright
Mhm.
performance. And I always said this after even the third playthrough. I was like, "That's you just wasted a fucking great actor." But I'm glad he's back and he can do it.
See, I
Sorry.
really liked, sorry, just one more thing. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
liked that we didn't see much of him. And like the thing as well is while you're moving through Seattle in the game, you don't really see much of the backstory and what's really going on with this war between the Seraphites and the WLF. So it's
Hmm.
kind of happening in the background, and everything that's been happening and is currently happening between those two factions is explained to you with dialogue and little scenes that you get to see. So it kind of I think it's one of the brilliant things of the second game is that it's a whole crazy story that could be a game in and of itself or a story in and of itself, but you get little snippets so you know what's happening, but you don't get to see it. So, and I think what's really good about that is because you don't get to see it, you actually don't really know which of these factions is the good guys or the bad guys. And I think
That's
that
because
that
there
that's
are no
that's
good
so
guys or
good.
bad guys.
But
No.
That's
you
what makes
don't know
it great
you
because
don't know which side is justified.
exactly, and that's what like is so good about like video games and storytelling is trying to figure out which side it is and then coming to the conclusion, oh, it's none of them because that pulls me to like when our we get our first introduction of Isaac. This I think was actually very clever having Josh Peck,
Hmm.
not specifically Josh Peck, but like a person well known to be a distraction because Isaac is sitting there in the back and you other than like me and some other people who were like that's fucking Isaac, you can't distract me, was used as a very good way of storytelling. So he comes in kind of a more like undertone brutal fashion, and the way that he is so upset internally, mostly this is where like his really good acting comes into place. You could tell there's inner turmoil, and he's dissatisfied with the orders that he's given. He doesn't like what's going on. He hates Fedra, and then going to several years in the future, I think it was 11 years, um to him essentially giving the orders that he would have defied at Fedra, but he feels justified giving those orders, was such a cool way to do that, to show how things can change and the
Mhm.
cycle of violence and brutality, which is a constant thing through the show. I thought that was really fun. Um, and then this is a fun story point. I don't consider this really an Easter egg, but I think a little bit of the story was inspired by a note that I think they're going to expand on maybe further in the game later. But there's a note that you can find while you're exploring. And it says, everything is in place. We will be waiting. Once you intercept the convoy, take the federal officers captive. You can obtain your post and join us. I know you've taken numerous risks and lived in fear of being discovered. Your loyalty to our cause is appreciated. Signed, Isaac. I think they took that note and expired it for Isaac's story in the game, which obviously we love that kind of stuff because
Mm.
the notes that we find in the game are what fill out the world for us.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
so being able to take those notes and make them into the rest of the story visually, very much appreciated.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's it. That's exactly the like my point. That's one of the ways that you get to see the story that's unfolding
Hmm.
without actually seeing it as part of what you play through in the game. So I love
Exactly.
those notes. Like there's the notes
They're the
in
best.
the sewers in when you finish Pittsburgh
Mm.
in the first game, and it's I forget the guy's name. It begins with an I.
Oh,
But you
yeah.
see, he's got like this bunker, and he like crashed his ship there, and then finds this little bunker in the sewers, and then people join, and you collect notes that tell the
Yeah.
story, even though you don't get to see it. That kind of stuff is so good, and I feel like
Yeah.
what makes the second game so great. We don't need to see these characters. The little things of dialogue and the little notes and stuff tell the story without us needing to actually see it. I think it's
Hmm.
really, really well done. So that to
It's
me was why I didn't need to see more of Isaac in
I
the
get
game.
yeah, totally. And it makes sense to like because it deviate from the games is not like totally accurate because you can't really do that with notes, but like being able to read it versus like seeing it or like hearing little things is really nice.
Mm,
The after show was really cool with Jeffrey Wright talking about Ryan, who's the one who plays the Seraphite, was talking about like how like amazing of a scene partner he was and being able to bring that character back, just the appreciation
Mm.
that Jeffrey has to this character, top tier. And I just like being able to actually have somebody reprise their role from the games is such a greedy, delicious gamer thing.
No one else could have played Isaac.
One,
That's
no,
just, it had to be Jeffrey Wright,
it
in my
had to
honest
be.
opinion, and I am clearly butthurt that he wasn't in the game more. That's my biggest problem with the entire thing because Jeffrey Wright is fucking awesome, and he just proves it again. He just proves it
Yeah.
again here. And I'm so, so, so glad that he is back and he can play Isaac to his fullest potential, let's put it like that. Because there is a lot to Isaac, and I'm glad that we already like tipping our toes into those waters because I'm like,
The
I
brutality.
did I did also have like a little bit of a wild theory that I wanted
oh,
to get your
go
guys'
on,
opinion on.
go on.
Okay,
Pop off.
so we have that really cool scene at the beginning with Pedro Soldiers where he throws the grenade in and kills them all, but saves one guy, right?
Oh,
Um, so the people that are like walking up on them, there's a bunch of people standing there, and he gets out to talk to them and stuff. Here's my wild theory. Do you think those people are Seraphites, or do you think they're wolves?
I
Because I
know.
think
Oh, sorry. I'll
I
let you finish your
think that
theory.
yeah, I think that they are Seraphites, and Isaac is like, we've like done killing these people, and he kind of joins them or starts a treaty with them, like which is mentioned, and maybe eventually they have differences in opinions of how they should run things or whatever. And obviously, it's 11 years later that now the WLF and the Seraphites are having this little war between them. So I think maybe that was a little scene to sow the seeds of like they actually had a partnership and a treaty at first, and then something threw a spanner in the works. That lady that's like right at the front that's talking to him, I'm wondering if that's maybe their savior that they always talk
It's
about. Like that's the lady.
it's not. We saw her in the preview for episode 5 dressed in wolf gear.
Oh, that actress that was in this
Yeah.
episode. Okay.
But I
Well, okay.
do
That then
do
kind of
like your
dismisses
theory
my theory.
though,
But
because that would be a cool thing to explore is like those two groups and like the split of it. I think that would be interesting.
I'm wondering if they all were just one group and then they had differences of opinions and stuff, and then they separated and had a
Yeah.
treaty, and then something broke that treaty, and they started warring with each other.
Because I
There
would
was
love
something
to know more
about
about the prophet.
yeah, exactly. That's why I was hoping that lady was the prophet, but it was just there was something about the way that they were standing there, which gave up like very big Seraphite vibes of like they were kind of scattered a little bit, and it's just it for me it was like ooh, was like Isaac and the Seraphites like in bed together, and then something blew that up.
That'd be interesting.
I
I
want to
love
know
your
who those people
theories.
are. I want to know who those people are.
Yeah, I love
Yes,
your
we'll
theories.
have to wait and see
Yeah.
if we're gonna see. That's the bigger question, or if they ever gonna do anything more with that. But we'll see. We'll see. The
I,
lady will be back, so who knows? Maybe we get a little
I
bit of
like
extra
her.
there.
Tiny
Yeah.
and feisty.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. So that was Isaac. Unless anyone else has any thoughts on Isaac. Isaac? No, no more Isaac. No, we love you,
I'll
Jeffrey Wright.
save my Easter eggs for the end.
Yes, 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 yes. We love you, Jeffrey Wright. That's the main point. Let's talk about Ellie now. Our main protagonist and her part in this episode. What did we think of Ellie's journey so far in this episode? On, let's start with you now.
Yes. So actually most of my points are kind of Easter egg related.
Okay, go
Um,
on.
but there are a couple of things that I do want to point out because it's important to like the story in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Skipping, of course, over the situation with Dina and going right into walking through the streets by Capitol Hill, this was one of my favorite parts of the game because,
Mm,
like, in the game, you already know they're in a relationship. We've got, the queer aspect, and now we have that a little bit more going into this. We go into Capitol Hill and we've got the rainbow flags. This is directly from the games. And I specifically took screenshots while I was playing through because I was like, I really, really hope they do this because it helps with the story of Dina and Ellie and kind of like continues to bring forward that these are queer characters and paints that in the background. So we have the flags, we have the everything, we have a couple like very similar lines that are talking about like, oh, what's with all the rainbows? They must have been very optimistic. And I almost started crying because I was like, for many reasons, that many people can probably detect. But they come across the Pride Circle, and that kind of broke me a little bit because they don't know anything about Pride. They don't know any of that because it's just not a really big thing or like not exactly like an important thing to know, but it's just one of those things that kind of just that celebration gets kind of left in the past because you're just simply trying to survive an apocalypse. Um, so I really appreciated having that in the background for both Ellie and Dina to connect with and have one of my favorite parts. Um, we have another great one is like Ellie is so like um aggressively excited to do things and setting off like the lid to the tank was just there was just some comedy to that that I couldn't help but giggle. So I Bella's performances are just absolutely stellar. Um, I'll try to go a little bit more surface on Ellie because a lot of this episode was focused on Dina, which we'll probably talk about kind of like them together during Dina's part. But the music store, I think we should all just talk about this part right now. The music store
Oh,
was,
I look, my biggest mistake with that entire episode is that I watched it on my way back home on the train.
oh, oh.
Yeah, I
So you were just like
we
crying into like your sleeves.
yeah, I was like, I can't. Why are you doing this to me?
And
Yeah.
you know what the worst part is in the game, that's an a missable experience. If you don't
hmm
go and explore around the music shop and find the guitar or not
You're
interact
missing.
with it because you think, oh, we're just gonna play the guitar, have a little thing. If you miss that or decide not to do it, go play the game right now.
Mm,
Because not only was it perfect, basically shot for shot, everything, it was just so beautiful.
hmm
And it gave a moment of peace that they're never gonna have again. And I will just continue to hype up Bella's performance because it's awesome and it's
hmm
beautiful and it's perfect. Um,
I have like one tiny little
do it.
misgiving about this scene,
Yeah.
and it's
Ooh.
not anything to do with the scene as well. I think in the game this is a gorgeous scene. And I feel like in the show they absolutely crushed it. Absolutely
Mhm.
from like the set design of like the leaves and the moss on the wall and Bella's performance of it, the same song. It sounded exactly the same as the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sort of Dina coming in and seeing her play it, and she's like, no, 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 go on. And then she's sitting there and she starts tearing up watching her play. I was like, this is so great. This is exactly what I wanted. The only misgiving that I have is the same kind of complaint that I had about last week's episode, where I was like, where is all of Ellie's rage and anger and things like that? And what I kind of meant was is like she's so angry at the start of her journey, and then that entire time you're playing in Seattle, you're walking around, and
Hmm.
sure she's talking to Dina, but she's very kind of you can see she's really bleak, and she's now the sadness of it, the grief of it is really hitting her. And she was very sad, and like she didn't really talk to Dina much, and it was all like
Hmm.
this. And then they get into that music store, and she picks up the guitar and starts playing, and then has this beautiful moment of like, I'm gonna do something now that Joel taught me how to do.
Hmm.
And that moment hit so much harder in the game because you could feel her sadness in all the little parts of the game leading
because
up
it
to
kind of
that.
breaks
And then
the
it
rage
happened.
apart.
Exactly. So it kind of, for me, it was like there's no anger in the last episode. This episode, I definitely was feeling Ellie's kind of grief and her sadness in ways, but there was also times where I felt like she was a bit too excited, like she
Mhm.
doesn't seem too bummed about things. So this moment was really great, but it's so much better in the game when you can really feel that this is just a nice moment she wants to share with Dina. But the scene itself was amazing. I really, really
Honestly,
appreciated it.
I totally get that. And there's one part where you can start, not really start, but continue seeing an elevation of Ellie's rage because we know it's there and it's been really small. And of course, we want it to be bigger. And I think we started to see that more with when Dina asks, or we get, a little bit later looking at the radio tower, like what do we do if we see wolves that aren't from the group? And the look on Ellie's face was exactly what I wanted to see.
Mm,
And I really hope we get like that even more as things go on because that was just the taste that I needed. That was the taste that I needed. It was so good. So good.
Here's the thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
I want to go back to the two of you's problem with Ellie not having enough range because I did get messages after last week episodes from friends and everything, and it's not just me. So I was a bit
It definitely isn't just you, for sure.
I was
It's
very
not.
much vindicated because I think what the two of you and many people don't really get is that they already changed the characters so much in season one, especially Ellie, because Ellie is very much a very different version of Ellie that we got from the game, that they simply cannot have the same motivation that they had in the game. And again, we have to keep in mind that we are moving time differently here than what you do in the game. And it's a completely different medium and translation of what's going on. And I believe at the end of the day, here, the grief and sadness can definitely turn into rage. But going instantly into rage mode, it just doesn't work. It wouldn't work in this case because we got a very different Ellie already in season one. And you know you got a different Ellie because they continued on that road in season two already because it's like, you know, a lot of people are like because it doesn't feel like 5 years have passed because Ellie still acts a bit like childish and whatnot.
She
He's
always
still
acts childish.
and
She's
she
a
is still a
teenager
child.
still.
She's
She's
still a
19.
teenager. Like, come on. Of
Yep.
course she's gonna be different. And you know then the other argument that I saw is that but it's the apocalypse and you know people change and they have to be in survival mode and whatnot. Yes, sure. Obviously that could happen, but like this is also a survival reaction basically from Ellie for trying to keep her light-heartedness a little bit and
Yeah.
joking and going around like that. And Bella's version is definitely not the same version as Ashley did.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very clear. And therefore, I think that here they very much made the right decision not going into full-on rage mode from the get-go.
So, so I have a question then. Do you, so I really like the perspective actually. It kind of shifts a little bit of things for me. But do you think that sadness and grief is a big enough motivator to find a group of people and kill them?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Because I feel like that's where the rage part comes in, and I think that's where I was feeling the disconnect. Where it's like if I was just like sad and feeling grief, I don't think that would motivate me enough to go and kill them. I think I would need more
Yeah, but
rage and
it's
anger.
look
mhm. I mean, that's exactly what
no, go on.
sorry, that's exactly what I feel about it is because like in the second game, she feels this rage and anger immediately, and what's so great about it is that that's her driving force. That's the central theme of the second game is rage and anger and the cycle of
Which works
violence.
super well, especially in the
And
game
it
because
rings
it's
true to Abby's character
matching.
as well.
Oh,
Bob,
sorry, you froze for a second.
yeah,
Sorry, my connection out a
You're
little
good.
bit there. Am I still here?
you are still here.
Okay. No, I just that I mean that's the whole kind of thing for me in this in the second game. That's the theme of it is rage and anger and what does that drive you to do? You know, so
Mm.
that's I feel like that's kind of missing, and it is the core theme of the second game. So yeah, sure, the TV show's going to do something different, and it's okay to disagree on that, but it's okay to disagree on this. I just think they're doing something that's ignoring is the core theme of the second game,
But
and that's
I
my issue with it.
again, I
I'm
don't
not
think that's
saying that
the.
they're doing a bad job. I'm just saying that they're not doing it.
But that's I don't think rage is the core theme at all in the second game. The core theme is vengeance and how the cycle of violence
Where does
will
vengeance come from,
always
though?
vengeance can come from many places. It's not like exclusively like belonging to rage. And don't forget that why Abby does what she does because she's grieving. And she needed to wait a much, 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 much longer time to get her revenge. But
I
it
think we
is
need a full episode talking about this.
yeah, sure. I think a much bigger. I think grief and not being able to accept that someone was taken from you way too early is a much bigger force than I am so angry. I'm gonna kill everyone. Sure, it works in certain circumstances, but let's not forget that they
Which she
did.
literally did say.
But they did a time jump for Ellie as well now.
Mhm.
We are 3 months apart from where Joel died and when they are on their way. So it's obviously, as I said in the last episode as well, it's not going to be the same. And it can't be the same because it just wouldn't work in this scenario. And I don't think that it has, it is a problem at the end of the day because if you want to experience the rageful and vengeful Ellie, you have the game. If you want to experience another version of this story that has really just tiny changes and just changes that fit the story that they started to tell and the characters that they started to build up, you have the Last of Us TV show. So I don't think it's like I really because I've been thinking about it a lot after last week of why are you two so dead set on the whole like rage thing of Ellie? Because for me, even in the game, that was never the main thing with her. And it's not the main thing because despite what she's going through and despite the things she's doing throughout the entire game, there is always regret. And she knows she's in the wrong. And that if she continues, it's just not gonna end. And you know that because of the end of the game. She's just, she's still like, it's still the same Ellie. It's just grief can be very, very powerful. I think grief is actually much more powerful than any kind of rage. And a lot of people do very messed up things because of grief
Mhm.
and because of a loved one being taken too early. So that's why I was like, I don't think I think that's the main reason why I don't agree because different medium, different character build up because it
Mhm.
is different character build up. And I think this now just fits what they've been working with so far much, much better than the instant rage.
And I think the reason it's instant rage, because I'm definitely trying to understand both, well, your perspective more because that's important because everybody can interpret things differently, and I appreciate that. I think the reason that the rage works especially well, specifically in the games, is because of the immediate cut to black and the quick pace of it because the game is trying to match your emotions at the same time. And if they took the time to do more of like the sad grieving such, I think the players would kind of lose motivation, which kind of translate to the show, but I'm also taking the translate to the show as in I'm kind of losing that motivation. But I think I'm gonna take a little bit of what Nick said in the first episode about Joel, where it's like this is, the adaptation of Joel, like it's a different Joel because I know we struggled with like the less brutal Joel in the first season. And so
Exactly.
I think yeah, exactly. And so I think especially when I do a rewatch of the whole season because I enjoy binging and having like a really long consistent watch, I'm gonna go with that in mind to see if it'll change my perspective a bit as well.
Mm.
So I think that's what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do because as of right now, it's all basically just agree to disagree, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that either.
No, no, no. And, it's obviously like I am trying to see your point as well because that's
Exactly.
that's that's why I've been thinking about it a lot. Like, what is it that we're exactly talking about here
Hmm.
and why is it different for me and for others as well? And it actually because I don't like to read comments and whatnot regarding my favorite things because people can be assholes, as we
It's
all
true.
know, and it's very tiring. But I made an exception because I was very interested to see like what everyone else is saying. Like, am I seeing it wrong, or is it like? But it's kind of like a kind of half half, I would say.
It is. It's very
It's
50-50.
it's very 50-50. Uh, I think I really, given how it was with season one, and one of my biggest complaints was Joel.
Hmm.
And her brutalness and her pure force being reduced for the show was one of my big problems. Even after a year, I was like still pointing it out, like it just didn't make sense. But now I'm thinking that I should probably go back once more
Hmm.
and watch it again. Uh, yeah, because yeah, at the end of the day, and I think that's very, very important with video game adaptations. There are things that you can perfectly copy, paste, and do it exactly the same way as it was in the game. And then there are things that work pretty well, fantastically even for video games, but wouldn't work for live action adaptations. Meaning that, someone who's in his 50s will probably not run around and kill 60 people just because he was able to in the game because you were the one who was playing him. And they obviously had to give him like more strength and more resilience and whatnot. So yeah, yes, I have to admit if I was wrong, I might have been too harsh with the whole thing now looking back at it. But I think they also doing just a better job now to convey that message that these are the characters we loved in the game, but these are also newly a little bit rewritten and rethought characters. Your
Hmm.
cats are adorable.
There's
They're fighting. They're like
they're so
the
cute.
Ellie
I
and
had to,
Abby.
yeah, basically. Speaking a little bit more about Ellie, I really like how they're bringing in a lot more of her recklessness,
Yes.
especially um because I know we're gonna talk more about Dina, but like Ellie's basically sacrifice in Dina's eyes to go in front of her and take the bite for Dina. I was shocked and in awe because one, the spores is how Dina finds out in the game.
Yes.
I was not mad about this change.
Mm.
In fact, I liked it so much more
Hmm.
because not only like the recklessness, but Dina saw how much Ellie cared to put her life literally on the line for her instead of just like with words. And
Mm.
it was just in pure actions. And I was sitting there going, I love this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
fucking love this. That was
I
such a good change.
I mean, to be fair, after not having spores, I kind of figured that it's going to be another bite, probably, because otherwise it wouldn't. How? How would you do it? So, but they did it really well. I definitely liked it as well. Like, yep, yep. I definitely enjoyed it. Can I
Yeah.
just quickly point out that, God damn it, like, this is this scene. This was the scene I wanted with Harry and Sam in season one
Oh yeah.
because I really, really like, especially in settings like this, I really, really like when they are in tight, close off spaces and they are just
Yeah.
overrun by a herd of freaking fungus zombies and whatnot. And it was so brilliantly done. And I will once again have to say thank you for listening, Craig Mason, and everyone who works on this because this is the second time they didn't forget about something that they created for the TV show, and that is the communication through the what do you call them, roots, basically, and that's how the herd gets to be able to find a group of people. Like it happened again, and I was like, fuck yeah, like, finally you're using what you created and it works. Like, this, I think this is all I was asking for as well. Like, it just, it was just so hard to see in season one that they are going through things and there are zero infected involved. And now that they are actively in danger from them, I'm like, I love that scene so much. It gave me freaking goosebumps. I was watching it on the train and I was like, "Ah."
So Nick, now it's your turn.
Now it's your
How do you
turn.
feel about Ellie after the guitar stuff?
Well, the one thing I was gonna say was that scene where she gets bit,
Yeah,
because I do like the way that they did it. I love the way they do it in the game. I love the spores thing, and it's great. It's really cool. But this one was interesting because she does. I didn't see it at first, but they talk about it later where she actually put her arm in front to like save Dina in that situation essentially, which means so much more for their character because I think Ellie even says later in the episode, like, I would die for
I
you.
would
Like
die for
that's
you.
the only
Yeah.
reason I took this fight. Like I think it was really well done, that whole moment. And I still I remember thinking about that. Or there was something that happens in episode one where Ellie gets bit by the stalker, and I'm still so baffled why they had Ellie get bit in the first episode. I'm like, we should already know
It's
that
the
she's immune.
recklessness.
Um,
It's
it's the
it's
recklessness and it's also to
but it
establish the
doesn't have to
stalkers.
be. But no, but what I'm saying though is it doesn't have to be a bite to show the recklessness. I'm like, why did she need to get bit? She could have got
Um,
injured or something like that. So it was
I
kind of weird for me because I thought that that bite was going to come back, and that's maybe how
mm,
Dina would figure it out. So I feel like it was just weird because you're kind of because getting bit in a zombie type show is a big deal, even if you're immune, because you're gonna have to cover it up or hide it or something like that.
but
So
she
it
did
just
that.
felt
With a
really
tattoo.
strange that she, yeah, no, I know she did that. I'm just saying, why did she get bit? Because then she
Yeah.
has to like cut
That,
herself to hide it. So it just felt so weird. And I was like,
Hmm.
but
okay, but
that's
now we actually got a bite that someone sees and they can see that she's immune. So I really liked how they did it. And it was cool to see Dina's reaction to it as well, where she immediately was just pulling the gun on Ellie, and I was just like, whoa! And it was such a tense scene, and ended so beautifully, where they both kind of accepted it, and Dina reveals she's pregnant, and then they're just like, okay,
Oh, I can't wait to talk about
cool,
this.
life-changing event, and they just go at it. So I really liked the scene, and everything in the way that they did it, and I'm really starting to like the relationship between the two of them, which is great, especially Ellie's side of it.
mm,
I'll have more to say once we switch purely over to Dina because Dina's a big, big focus.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Just the one thing that I will say, I think I said this with episode one. I don't think that bite had anything to do with Ellie's recklessness. I think it literally was to establish that stalkers are a big deal. And once you are in their grasp, there's nothing you can do about it, really.
But
Uh,
why do it with a bite? Like that's what I'm so
because
confused.
like
Why have a character bite? Why have a character that's immune get bit and then immediately they remove any kind of evidence of that bite? It just is so weird.
Because that's what infected do.
yeah.
It's
Hmm.
purely a bite mechanic to because
Yeah,
that's the only way to get infected. If you get scratched by them, it's fine. But if
yeah,
you get bit by them, that's how they transmit the infection.
Hmm.
So they want to
exactly.
spread it to everyone they
And
can. So bites are bites.
to establish that a stalker is going to be a big deal, and I really think that they either changing something around and focusing more on the stalkers because I don't think that scene was just for nothing, basically, or who knows? Who knows what they're gonna do with it? But I think it's gonna be important later on, and they needed to establish that they are very much possibly we can say that they are much more dangerous than anything else because they actually think and stalk and do all that stuff. So I still that's how I interpreted that scene. All right. Anything else regarding Ellie from anyone, or can we jump to Dina?
We can jump to Dina because they're both intertwined.
All right, Dina, it is
Yeah, they
then.
were.
I'm so glad you
uh,
caught that.
so Owen, you start because you're
Okay,
very excited.
I am very excited.
I can
So
tell.
we of course get the well, at first not everybody really knows like what's going on with Dina. There's an Easter egg in there I'll save for later, so remember to watch the end where I spitfire a whole bunch. But we find out later that they are a bunch of pregnancy tests, and of course, like anybody with female anatomy that could get pregnant is uh you take like a ton to make sure. I don't think the pregnancy tests last more than 1 to 2 years, but you know what? We can let that go. Um, but the acting within like Isabella is so profound. Like her performance this episode deserves an Emmy. Like at least a nomination, if not a win. Because seeing Dina seeing Ellie, play the guitar and play, you can see the moment where she realizes that she loves Ellie. And that was so cute. And uh continuing to establish that Dina is the one who like not really has the brains, but like the patience to do a plan and figure things out and do it right is great because when Ellie's going to be on her own, it's going to be a shit show. It's going to be a shit show. Um, and continuing through uh the scenes of the like uh was it the radio tower? I think it is the radio tower with the bodies
Hmm.
and everything there and her throwing up again. It was just like another like yep, there's basically your confirmation. Uh did anybody else think when they looked up at the window and the blood was Tommy's?
Yes, I
Because my
did.
first thought was
I thought it was Tommy or Jesse. A
yeah,
hundred percent. I thought it was someone's.
I did too. So I'm holding out that hope. But the thing I really, really want to talk about is when they get to the theater.
Yes.
The
Um,
theater.
the theater. The way that the show is structuring things is very clearly reorganizing the timeline. So there's a lot of things from the game that we didn't get in the show before getting to the theater, which I think we will get later because there's a lot of really good plot points, especially with potentially Tommy and like the hotel and a whole bunch of things there and with more WLFs, which I'm sure we'll get later. But this was such an emotional scene with the how terrified Dina is that she has to kill somebody that she just is coming to terms with that she loves and having having the patience to listen to Ellie before killing her is great. That plot armor is real good right now. Um, and continue to stay up all night watching over Ellie and making sure she doesn't turn. And the way that, like, when the light finally shines back on her face, because it was strategically not on her face at all when she was watching Ellie and seeing the crying like swelling under her eyes and just the fear and the anguish and finally believing her And this is where I was actually okay now with not having their intimate connection earlier because there was something so intense about Ellie giving this reveal, Dina giving it a reveal. The emotions are so high and so intense that they just go at it. Um, I think what would have made the scene better is hold on real quick. They find some water and clean their hands because that's the first thing I thought was your hands are filthy. And that's what you're going to do with your hands?
Love that
Please.
logic.
Yeah. I was like, please guys. That's that's going to that's going to cause a
So good.
UTI.
I
That was
didn't
my
think about
only
it until now, and I'm like,
I
Yeah,
know,
you just
right?
ruined that whole scene for us.
I know.
yeah,
And but
less
other
romantic
than that,
immediately. I'm
Other
like,
than that,
ugh.
though.
yeah, I know. It was my first thought was,
Ew.
oh guys, please. But there was so much love and the story that Dina tells with her mother saying, you know, no, you like boys makes me,
Hmm.
and I know I had a lot of issues with what the writers had Dina say in the previous episode. I still think they could have done that better. I still think they could have done that with a little bit more grace and nuance, but they didn't. And, you know, that's whatever. But I really appreciated having a further explanation and story of Dina's sexuality and, you know, coming to terms with it and learning that it's okay. And the reason why she kept going back to Jesse was also really important. And we just talk about how Ellie
Hmm.
says, I'm going to be a dad. That was so cute. That was
Oh,
so
that was so
cute.
cute.
That was so cute. That was one of my favorite parts of the season.
Mm.
And in in the game, it goes very differently. Ellie snaps at Dina after saying that, you know, after telling her that she's pregnant, and they kind of don't talk for a bit and they kind of have a little bit of a rough go there for a bit, and I really
Hmm.
really liked the change that it brought them closer
And why
and
did
they
it
didn't snap
change?
at each other.
Yeah.
I
Why?
I like
Why?
that you have something else.
Huh?
I
Why did it
know.
change? Huh? Because they are not the same characters as they are
I
from the
know.
game.
I'm learning to come to terms with the changes.
No,
I'm
see,
doing it. But I did enjoy this change because it brought them closer because it's going to make them getting separated from each other a whole lot more painful.
We're gonna get a very because it is like I think especially this moment because I think that's the only thing that I want to mention regarding Dina because you already said everything else. Is in fact I think this scene proves exactly what I mean when I say that having these changes in Ellie's behavior just makes perfect sense for the show
Mhm.
because here if we would have gotten the beginning of Ellie, where it is more grief and sadness and whatnot. But then we would have gotten the same scene of Ellie like being like, "How could you come if you're pregnant?" Blah 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 blah, and just blowing up on Dina. It wouldn't make sense. Why it wouldn't make sense? It wouldn't make sense because we don't have the rage, and we don't need the rage for Ellie here because it is time passed. It is it is a completely different setup for her character, and therefore we got this scene, uh,
Mhm.
which for them in this setting is just perfectly done, and the other one wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
It
see,
just wouldn't have.
I kind of, not that I disagree there, but I think that the reason Ellie is kind of upset with Dina in the game is simply just because of the medium of it being a video game. They needed a period of
No.
like the two of them being, just let me explain first.
Okay.
They needed a period of them being kind of uneasy with each other just to extend it so that you could have a whole gameplay chapter like you could have more game time essentially because they were always Ellie was always going to be okay with it but they needed to just elongate that a
Hmm.
little bit and the fact that they didn't do it in the show is something I wanted to talk about this the fact that they didn't do that in the show I appreciated because you know obviously Ellie's going to be okay with it and the fact that they didn't they didn't have any kind of part of Ellie being uneasy about it or upset or anything. I appreciate it because it was like if she was upset about it, it would have been like, well, obviously you're going to be cool with this. Let's just skip ahead. So I
Hmm.
appreciated that they didn't waste time and do that because in the game you kind of need that because you need a little bit more gameplay so you can kind of get through it and eventually get to that point. So I was okay that there was no kind of upsetness, and I don't think the
I was
upsetness in
too.
the game is related to Ellie's rage. I think she's kind of just like shocked by the news,
Hmm.
and it's used as a plot device just so that you can have an extra hour or two of gameplay before you start progressing the plot again. Um,
It's
I like that in the show they kind of just were like, you know what, she obviously she's gonna be cool with it, so let's just go straight at it.
Hmm.
wow. It's like
I know
look,
exactly what you're thinking.
no,
She's with one thing and of the other, and they match up.
no. What I'm thinking is that I don't think that's true at all. Like there is where the true rage comes on from Ellie because she is on a mission to kill the people who killed his her father figure, and Dina tags along because she wants to tag along, and she tags along knowing that she is pregnant. And Ellie only sees in that moment because of the rage and because of you know what is basically fueling her to go on this road at the end. Is that here is this girl who I love and she knows how important this is for me. She knew that she was pregnant and she still decided to come, even though this can be a huge risk for her. So she is angry for Dina and at Dina because she is a withholding thing in the situation because of the whole pregnancy. So I think that's you getting that completely wrong because that's not just because of gameplay. That is a very, very human reaction from Ellie because in those 3 days, all she sees is red. All she sees is that I need to get my revenge. It doesn't matter what it is. And now here's the girl who I love, and because of her pregnancy, I might not be able to do it. I think it's more of a she obviously because she loves the girl, she would have considered even turning back because of the whole pregnancy thing. But her rage is so big and so, you know, unbearable that she's not gonna do that because in that moment, getting revenge for Joel is just more important, and that's why she gets really, really angry with Dina. I don't think that was just a let's elongate the gameplay thing at all.
I think it's both. I think it can be both.
They're gonna stay together. Like I'm just gonna point that out. That the episode ends with the implication that they actually not gonna separate Dina and Ellie, and it wouldn't make sense because let's be honest, and that was my brother pointing it out. Yeah, believing that a 19-year-old who's like barely 50 kilograms goes around and kills adult men by herself is kind of unbelievable for a TV show. So yeah, I think it's very clear that Dina is not going to stay behind, and she's actually going to tag along for further things for day 2 and day 3. So yeah, I have to say, I don't know, we switch roles. Completely
Yeah.
for season 2 because I completely disagree. I think it is, and that's why it wouldn't work here because it is she has a very different motivation currently, Ellie. So her rage towards Dina in this situation just wouldn't make sense. Just simply wouldn't make sense because yeah, it just
Yeah.
wouldn't. It wouldn't fit the character. But anyway, let's hear those Easter eggs because we are elongating this
Yes.
episode and we need to close it down.
Okay, so there are a couple of really fun things. So, let's see. I've made a lot of notes. Okay, so we clearly know that the shots for the guitar sequence is exactly like the game's scenery, everything, the way that they're sitting. Perfect, beautiful, wonderful little Easter egg there. Um, uh, they did so well creating these sets because they feel exactly like the game, like the WLF guys that are hanging with their guts out is directly from the games. Everything about that, perfect. A fun little Easter egg, if some people didn't watch the after show, is they didn't use dummies up there. They were real stunt doubles
Nice.
sitting there. And I thought
I
like
thought
they
you were going
didn't
to say
have
real
to do
cadavers and real
real
intestines for a
cadavers.
second. I was like, wait,
Yay!
what?
They were real stunt people, and they didn't have to do it, but they did for practicality's sake. And I thought that was a
Nice.
really cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, we have a couple of in-game mechanics that came back up. We have the sneaking mechanic that they tried to do. I need to go back and verify this one for myself, but somebody had pointed out that um, that when the second WLF spots Ellie strangling the first guy, they played the spotted sound effect from the game in the background. And I feel
Ooh,
like I recognize that. I'm gonna have to go back and double check to be sure because that would be
I'm going to do
so
that right now.
cool. Right, yeah, good. Go right to right now. Then we have for the rest of the mechanics is Ellie's arm wrapped in the bandage. That's exactly how it is in the game when you need to heal yourself. That's what you do with the bandage right there on your arm. Then we have Dina again listening for the clickers. That's one of the other mechanics that Ellie does, and she counts how many they are. And depending on the type of player that you are, you can more or less sneak through that section in the game. But here they do what most players did and booked it and ran. And this one isn't particularly an Easter egg. It's more of like a directing Easter egg kind of. So the whole sequence inside the cars is the train cars
Mm.
is way more intense in the show than it was in the game. I cannot stress that enough. Same with like the gate crushing Abby. Boy, they're really turning it up and really freaked me out. I was just like, anyways, the directing is there's basically three cars, and the director talks about how she elevated each of the cars in severity. So it kind of starts off with, oh, they're on the outside, they're banging in. The second one, they're starting to break in. The third one, they have broken in.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just a really clever way to build up the tension and really great direction. We have the when they get into the theater, what color are those couches, everybody? They are Naughty Dog yellow couches. There's
That's
a
true.
couple little like yellow things in the background, but I saw those chairs and I was like, you have
Yeah.
to
There
know
it
what you're
is.
doing. You have to. Naughty Dog yellow couches. Um, and then from there, we've got a couple of other things. So, back to the beginning with the drugstore, which is called Weston's Pharmacy. That's actually spotted two times in the games. The first one is in the Left Behind DLC in the first game. When you're in the mall, that's the pharmacy that is there. And then it shows up in part two, which is what we see now as well in Seattle. So it shows up in both those places. And that was a really it's really nice when they bring in those direct things. And last but not least, and of course, if you spotted any Easter eggs that I didn't, please put it in the comments. I want to know more and I want to see more. Uh, is Isaac is wearing the same exact clothes from the game with that green, almost cameo colored shirt and the patches on like the upper shoulders, the strips. It was the exact same outfit.
Mm.
And we all know I love when the outfits match up. Also, I researched Dina's jacket that she's wearing. That is a $550 jacket.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
That's an
Damn.
expensive coat,
It's
but
an
it's pretty.
expensive goal. It
That's
is.
very
It
pretty.
is.
It
Uh,
is.
but that's all I've got for the rapid fire Easter eggs. This was a really, really good episode for all of those. That was nice.
Yes. Well done, well done. All right, let's go and read this episode. And we're gonna start off with Nick. Nick, how would you rate this episode, please?
So this episode for me was a solid episode. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the things they did. I'm happy with the plot progressions.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we pretty much touched on everything, but certain specific things I liked was I liked Isaac. I liked how they're fleshing out his character a lot more. As I said, I don't feel like I needed any more of him in the game because he didn't feel like as important a character for me personally. But I do think he's an interesting character, and in the medium of a TV show, you have that opportunity to flesh out characters more. And I'm excited to see more of Isaac because Jeffrey Wright's doing an incredible job already, and I'm just so intrigued. I think they did it so, like I said at the beginning, my theory about who those people were that were kind of standing outside the Fedra tank and stuff. I'm so invested in who are those people and how did this whole thing start and seeing if my theory maybe plays out or something. I'm really like the character it was introduced and I'm just really intrigued by him already. So that was a big point for me. Um, Dina's plot progression in this or character progression in this episode was great as well, confirming she's infected and that she's pregnant. Sorry. Um, and finding out that Ellie's infected, like that was a big moment, and I liked how she kind of was immediately like, I've got to take you out. She understands what the infection means, and the fact that she trusts Ellie enough to kind of not kill her right away and sort of have that moment of like let's trust each other was great. And then to see the two of them finally together was really awesome. All of that, not to mention the really cool action scenes that we got. I really enjoyed the stealth with the WLF, and then the infected in the tunnel and the whole chase scene. It was all really, really well done. So this is an episode much better than last week for me. It's 8 out of 10 this week.
I scrolled up a little bit in my notes and I found two quick ones. The first one is the kid that Isaac basically saves, or at least gives the choice of what he wants to do, is Ben Allers. And if you thought you recognized that kid, but you're not totally sure, that's Jack Treacher, the character from the Gilded Age. I just started the Gilded Age like literally this past week and I was like, I
Mm.
know that kid from somewhere. So that was a fun thing to recognize. One of my other things is actually a question. Is that how they're gonna leave Shimmer? Are we just gonna just let Shimmer go into the wild now instead of what happens in the games?
I would prefer that, yes.
I would too.
So
I would
hopefully,
too.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Um,
R.I.P. Shimmer.
all right, piece of Shimmer. Shimmer from the games at least. Um, but the
From the
last one
game.
is
Yeah.
yeah, is in the music shop. Is there's several posters that match up to the game as well, but also Dina playing on the drums is also directly from the games that she does, and that's also really
Yes.
cute too. But my thoughts about the episode are I really liked this a lot more than last week, but there's this the intensity that they're bringing to these almost every episode is so much more than season one. And I'm very, very happy about that because they truly did listen to us. Like Liz's been saying, they've increased the infected, and now even though us gamers know spoiler, know that some people have plot armor, still manages to make it really intense and really scary and worried for those characters
Mm-hmm.
is such an impressive feat.
True.
And I really enjoyed the changes in this episode. I thought they were well done and they fit the TV show versions of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And uh like there's so much like exciting things to say about this episode that I've already said. So I'm basically just gonna give it my rating because you've already heard everything exciting and not exciting I've had to say. I'm going to agree. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. This was one of my favorite episodes by far, and I'm still saving my really higher rankings for later just in case.
Fair
This
enough.
was so good.
So good.
Ellie
So
has to get
good.
another tattoo now to cover up the
Yeah,
new bite
probably. What it's gonna be. What it's gonna be.
because I'll
Uh,
get it.
yeah. 9 out of 10. Fucking loved it. Like, it had everything I asked for previously.
You know what? I'm going to raise to a 9. The more I think about it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Isaac is unbeatable. Jeffrey Wright, you're a god. I love you. And everything in it was just, yeah. this is how you do it. It's no wonder that they're calling it the best game adaptation so far. I think I can finally agree after season one. And I just appreciate that they listened. I can't stress this enough. The fact that they listened to us and they actively were like, maybe we should listen to the people who are watching this. Yes. And thank you. This is all I ask for. Like, let me feel the fucking threat of the word. Why was it important to take Ellie there? Why when we didn't see or barely seen anything and now it's here? And I'm like, yes. So I can't wait to see more. I am very, very excited to see what else are they, because I think it's exciting. What else are they leaving out? What else are they including? How are they going to change things a bit more around? I don't mind the changes so far because none of them are too big to have a problem with it. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I do wonder because I've been thinking about it. Are they going to play the card of only having Abby back for maybe the last episode? So far, it looks
I
like.
have the theory that season 3 is going to be Abby's focus.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking before the season released as well. And I think, yeah, I think it's very much kind of getting a confirmation now
Yeah.
as we're watching it. But we'll see.
Oh,
We'll see.
I I did want to point out too, so Nick, you had a theory to like 2 episodes back about the spores and how they would like introduce them. I
Hmm.
still think you are right. Because next
Okay.
episode, like in the preview, they talked about their spores. I think your theory is just going to be opposite. I think they're introducing the spores in like the main story. So then it happens to Eugene in potentially the finale because we only have 3 episodes left. So I guess maybe it'll happen in the 6th episode, not the finale. But I love that theory so much that I just want to point out that I seriously hope you are right because I love it so much.
Mm. Okay, okay, fair enough, fair enough. All right, this was us talking about The Last of Us season 2, episode 4 now. So there's only 3 episodes left, and we're gonna be back for those 3 episodes, and we're gonna talk about it more. So yeah, make sure you tune back in. Until then, go to CouchSoup.com. Come check out our articles, check out what we've been watching and writing about, but also stay on YouTube, subscribe, leave comments and likes, and let us know what you thought about this episode of The Last of Us. Also rate us on the different podcast platforms because it helps grow. And then that's it. We're going to be back next week. Until then, don't forget, enjoy and survive.
Endure and survive.
Bye.